Hi, and welcome to the 14th episode in the epic series SEO, is AEO. Today we're going to be talking about how to leverage multi-brand in the multi-channel, multi-device acquisition. This is going to be really great. We've got Aiden Carroll, Stoney G, deGeyter, and Melissa Fach, which I got wrong last week, and I do apologize if you do ever watch the last episode. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is the penultimate episode. I've been wanting to say that for a long time because you can only say it once in this series. And this is episode 14, the penultimate one. The last one is next week. Introducing everybody, we'll start with Melissa. I see you started off in psychology.
Yeah. Can you guys hear music?
I'm hearing some music. Is that you?
It was. Okay. No, I don't know what it was.
Okay. If you've got a problem, ask Aiden. He's really good at troubleshooting Macs.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you started off in psychology and moved straight over to SEO with your own company. I think that's really cool. Straight out of college, set up your company. You had the courage to do it.
Yeah, my master's is actually in mental health, which is kind of odd that I went into this, but I had a child and I didn't want to work all the time. So I thought, what can I do at home? And started doing content writing, which led to SEO, and then it just kind of snowballed from there.
Brilliant stuff. I mean, I would have thought coming out of university, starting up your own company straight away is pretty scary. But
yeah, I mean, it was easier back then to start an SEO agency.
Oh, because there were very few.
It was easy to have all 10 spots, and Google made it harder. So, but
did you just have to choose a company name that started with A or 1, 2, 3?
We just had to buy domains in 301. It was just easier. So yeah.
And you've moved on from there to now be involved in PubCon, Moz, Semrush, all sorts of stuff. Search Engine Journal. I mean, basically everywhere you look, Melissa Fach is there.
I've SEJ kind of, they wanted to change it up. I changed it up and went to Moz, and then Authority Labs, and then PubCon, and then now PubCon and Semrush or Semrush. I say Semrush, but everybody says it's wrong. So,
oh, I don't. I say it's right. Semrush. I'm with you. That makes two of us. But outside of that, I see you like Ultimate Fighting Championship. I saw that on Twitter.
Oh yeah.
But alongside that, everybody says you're kind and calm and reassuring, and you like holding your husband's hand. That's a bit contradictory.
Oh, yeah. Well, I like football and MMA, but the mental health counselor is always there. So that plays into community a lot. And I think that's why I was successful managing community and social media, because I didn't get offended. I didn't get angry. Sure. And for PubCon, I do the same thing. And you just have to stay even keel and you're good.
And because you're kind and even keeled. Jolly good. I think that's a great way to end it. Now, Stoney, moving on to you. In fact, you're the same. You went straight from college and set up your company.
Well, sort of, yeah. I mean, never really finished college. I was just working some jobs, and then, and then I started my company and said, I picked up a book to learn HTML, got halfway through it and started building websites, and then started marketing them.
You didn't bother reading the second half?
I really didn't. I got enough to get the knowledge I needed, and then just...
So that the page stops loading about halfway down, yeah?
Pretty much, yes, it does.
But you actually come from a graphic design world.
Yeah, I mean, I was designing brochures and things for a large real estate developer that sold malls and things like that. And then I got into web design, and I quickly realized my skills in that were limited, and the marketing really intrigued me. And I was able to move from the design over to the marketing side because I understood it, and it just came naturally to a large degree. And so that's kind of where I built the business up.
Brilliant. So we've got somebody who came from content into SEO, and somebody else who came from design into SEO. And have you seen that you've got a knowledge panel?
I do.
I just found you. You should claim it. It's not been claimed.
Actually, I did. I saw that yesterday. And I thought, well, that's weird. And I'm like, do I need to claim that? I don't. I suppose I do. Yes.
You do? Okay. Well, what's nice now is you saw it before me. I thought I was springing this great surprise on you.
Well, I guess I wasn't sure about it. I saw him like, that's a fluke, right?
No, it's actually, if you talk to Gennaro, who did the knowledge, the structured data episode a few weeks ago, he got his from doing a book. So your book, which we can see proudly shown behind you, which is apparently absolutely brilliant, is what's got you the knowledge panel. And yes, you should claim it, and maybe you should talk to Gennaro about how to manage it.
Yeah, I'm going to get on that.
Great. Aiden, last on the list. I see behind you you've got Japanese wallpaper, but you actually studied Korean.
Yes, that's accurate. That's fair.
So you've chosen Japanese and not Korean, or
I mean,
forced on you?
I'm not what we would call the most adroit of interior designers, Jason. I mostly just sit in front of the wallpaper rather than put the wallpaper up, nor choose the wallpaper, nor buy the wallpaper. God, I love serviced offices, actually, on that note. But it is what it is.
I think it looks lovely. It's making my head hurt a little bit, though.
Okay,
I also saw that you were a TV presenter on the BBC and Channel 4, which I find really cool.
Yes, that's fair. I prefer being on camera than being in real life. Realistically, as a motivator there. So as you probably can tell, I love a webinar, and I always describe myself as the world record holder unofficially for webinars. Although you've done what, 15 now in this series?
In fact, I've done 3 in French as well, so it's going to be 18.
So actually, you're catching up, I would suspect, at this particular stage. But yes.
So well, I'll catch you up in 2019. What I wanted to know is, what is Udderbelly?
Udderbelly is it is a spin-off brand for Channel 4's Underbelly. It is a comedy festival for all intents and purposes. It is on London South Bank in the summer, or in Edinburgh Fringe Festival in August if you are in the north.
Oh, right. Jolly good. I like that. I just thought Udderbelly. I was just thinking of cows. That's the only thing I could think of.
It's a purple cow upside down, and it's full of famous comedians.
All right. Well, I think that's a really wonderful way to start something a bit more serious. And we're actually going to start with Aiden. I found this really nice diagram explanation. And before I started doing the research for this episode, I actually didn't know anything about it. I kind of said, yeah, cross-channel, whatever, multi-channel. And then I found this, and I suddenly realized it's much more involved and much more complicated than I thought. You've got single channel, multi-channel, cross-channel, omni-channel. And Aiden's going to tell us what they all are.
Well, I mean, I'm going to engage with the debate on what they all are. And admittedly, when we were prepping for this particular webinar context, Jason was like, look, I found this cool thing. I'm like, yeah, it's a cool thing. We'll use it to have a conversation about this because, of course, we're talking about brands in a multi-channel capacity here. And the thing about marketers in a real danger, and it's not true of Stoney, nor Melissa, nor Jason, nor myself, of course, we're very succinct, and we always mean what we say. But in marketing, of course, we have a tendency to make up acronyms and words for things, rightly or wrongly. And we sit around kind of the meeting room table and we look at each other like, yeah, we all know what we're all talking about. And this diagram attempts to illustrate this in some ways, I think. Cross-channel is, of course, this notion of on multiple channels, which is weird because you would think that's called multi-channel. And then, of course, your omni-channel, which is your marketing nirvana land. Omni-channel being all channels, so omnipotent from that particular word. Multi-channel is more integrated, and cross, which kind of this particular graphic belies, often are inverted. So you can see there you've got your single channel, your mono channel at one end, and your marketing nirvana, your omni on the other. And in the middle, no one can kind of agree the difference between cross and multi, if there even is one. So some people will say cross-channel is same messaging across multiple channels, so search, paid social, whatever. And some people will say that's multi-channel, in fact, and the opposite is true. So multi-channel really implies, whether it is in a fairly rudimentary way, cross-channel, they tend to be used fairly synonymously, one way or another. There are massively overlapping worlds, of course, between retail, social selling, marketplaces, websites, real life, clicks and mortar stores these days. And there is a lot of heat, I guess, around this conversation, but not an awful lot of light, as I would say. They're hot subjects, I suppose. This graphic purports to illustrate that a little bit, but it doesn't necessarily give us a lot of clear guidance, a lot of clear direction on how we ought to get there as a business, which is kind of what, Jason, I think the purpose of this webinar really sort of set up around.
It is, exactly. I mean, so I like the idea of there's a lot of heat, but not very much light. I'm sure that's something you're using in your teaching, because you teach a lot, I know. It's a really neat little phrase. I mean, personally speaking, I would say we've got single channel on one end, omni-channel, which is nirvana, as you said, and then the two in the middle, they're more or less interchangeable. And as a I was going to say Neanderthal, but that's not the right word, is it? It doesn't matter to me very much. A multi-channel, cross-channel are the same. So with that simplification, I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is something I showed right at the beginning of this series. And it's the idea that, oh dear, we've gone black. Excuse me. Is it just me who can't see that? Oh, the idea anyway that in the old world of SEO, we had a list of 10 links. We were trying to rank vertically. We were trying to get one of those top 10 spots, as Melissa said earlier on. It was pretty easy to get them in the early days. It got progressively harder. And now we've ended up in this horizontal world where we're trying to rank number one on multiple devices rather than in the top 10 on one specific device, which was desktop and then moved on to mobile. So you have all these devices, voice assistant screens, mobile phones, in-car assistants, and even laptops now. And if you're not in the top 1, 2, 3, or one to three places, you're nowhere. So we're looking at multi-channel because we're having to rank number one across the spectrum. I'm having some problems with the technical aspect, but I will talk you through the slides. We're going cross-channel, which I thought was a nice Brexit-themed comment. We're going cross-channel. And going cross-channel from all the reading I've done is value your customer more, maintain a consistent brand voice. And that sounds to me incredibly easy. I mean, nothing could be simpler. 2 points to look out for: value your customer more, maintain a consistent brand voice. And the question then is to, excuse me, I'm still having trouble with my slides, is how do we best go about getting a consistent message across all the channels? Melissa?
Well, I think the problem begins when not everyone is on the same page. You have in-house teams that are either not working together or they're not informing other teams. I mean, like Semrush is a massive company across multiple countries. And the struggle, or it's not really a struggle, but I mean, there's a big focus on everybody being informed and this department being notified and this department being notified, and everyone's on the same page. But I've worked at other companies where that is not the case. And so if you have everybody on the same page in regards to what the message is going to be with PPC, email, your app, your social, your content, your SEO, I mean, then you've got the consistent brand message. But that also means that you have to have a really strong in-house team, overall team. There's going to be trust between teams. We've all worked with companies where certain teams don't trust the developers and the developers don't trust the SEOs. And you can't have that if you want a consistent, strong message and a strong brand. So the other thing is that everyone needs to talk to each other before any platform is used. And I really think that, I know that it's a struggle. I hear it at PubCon every year. It's a struggle, the same message over and over. But if everybody could have the same plan, and I think that really comes down to the managers making sure everybody's on the same page and everybody has the same goals. And instead of it being our goal is this and our goal is more important than your goal, when that happens, you can see that the messages are not consistent. Because people want to make money for this department, but they don't care about that department or the overall goals. So that's really when you see the fails happen the most.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it is a phenomenally big problem. That was a really great answer. I've sorted out my technical problems, and I do apologize for that. We're now moving on to Stoney, and the question is, how is the relationship between the consumer and brands evolving at the moment?
I mean, I think that matters a lot between brand to brand, but we're seeing that the consumers are getting a lot more control over how messages are obviously being taken in, how they're being consumed, where they're being consumed at. And before, I mean, it used to be, hey, the brand could put out a message, any message they want, they had full control over that. And now a brand puts out a message and you get consumers who come back, they fight back against it, or they take it and run with it from there, you know, and you know, just looking at YouTube videos, and they can put out a commercial, which before it would only air on TV, and now people will pass it along, and that consumption is being perpetuated well beyond what the brand can ever even do or could do on their own. So we're seeing a lot of the control being pulled away from the brands themselves. They still have to craft the message. They still have to be in charge of everything overall. But some aspects of that, it's completely out of their control. And, you know, all they can do is try to herd the cats, you know, as best they can, get out a good message and then try to steer it, you know, but trying to control it, those days are gone, I think.
Okay, brilliant stuff. So we're herding cats now?
Yeah, pretty much, you know.
Steering them, we had the underbelly, so it's all very cow and cat related today. And I know Melissa's got a cat, which is great. Sorry to get off topic.
But to further what Stoney said as an example yesterday, I don't know if you all saw Saturday or maybe Sunday, Monday, Netflix took a hit because it was reported that Friends was no longer going to be on Netflix. And Twitter went wild, and then the news picked it up. And they didn't even get to make a statement yet. And as Stoney was saying, the consumers took it and controlled the whole narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So the consumers actually have a great deal of power, and as you said earlier on, Melissa, making sure that you're communicating them in a standardized or a coherent manner is incredibly important. Would that help reduce that kind of wildfire that can happen?
I think one good example I saw of that is when Donald Trump attacked Nordstrom for not carrying his daughter's line anymore. Whoever ran their social was brilliant because people were just slamming them on Twitter about how horrible they were. And they had like 8 or 9 different messages about this was all about, you know, it wasn't selling. It's not about Donald Trump. And they did that. I think I took screenshots for 18 hours they worked. And you know what? They kind of changed the narrative around, but they remained consistent all the way through. And I think that's important when you're facing a crisis like that.
So what they managed to do was as soon as the problem came, somebody came up and said, right, this is the message we're going to communicate. And they respected it. And that worked out very well for them.
Right. It was released in it was released in a statement in the news. It was the same on Twitter. It was the same on Facebook. It was the same everywhere.
Okay. So a consistent message will allow you to steer the cats.
It could. Cats are hard.
Well, and a lot of that, doesn't that just come back to having a good overall marketing strategy to start with? You know,
right.
I think a lot of times we get stuck in what are the tactics we need to be doing, what social channels we need to go on, what do we do over here, here, and here. But you need to back that up and say we need to start with a coherent strategy overall, and then let people develop things within that strategy as long as it fits within that framework.
Right. And one other thing I would add to that is a crisis management plan. When something like this arises, there needs to be protocols in place so that you don't have someone on social media replying and giving a different answer than, you know, I mean, it's got to be consistent. So you have to have, especially with a larger company, a plan. When something goes wrong, who do you contact? What departments do you talk to? Who's going to make the final call? What teams need to get together to come up with that marketing message? And as your company grows, you have to have that because anything could happen. Your CEO. Go ahead.
Sorry, it's got to be quick. You know,
yeah, it's got to be
quick. Large companies, that's not easy. You know, you got to go through all these layers, but you've got to have something streamlined. So with social media, you got to have a quick turnaround. We got to have a response. We can't pass this to the account executive and then the manager and then so on until somebody says, okay, this is what you do after a week. You got to know, you got to have something going.
And I think 2017 was turn the tide. Everyone's offended. So 2018, that has remained consistent for 2019. If you don't have a plan by now, anything can happen to you in a second. So you've got,
So the world of communicating a brand, at least on social media, changed in 2017. I love that idea. And it gives me a nice idea of how late I am with all this. Next question is for Aiden, who hasn't actually said very much so far. So I'm glad to give you a bit of time. Cross-channel marketing is unavoidable, in my opinion, now that I've read a few articles about it. How do you switch from mono to cross-channel marketing? That's the practical side you were talking about earlier on.
Yes, I mean, I was silent there because I was taking in both Stoney and Melissa, and obviously in the context of CrisisCon. Weirdly, I actually used the US Air Force's crisis communications response chart to build it out for people. It's quite interesting. It's old as hell. You've probably seen it, Melissa. It's kicked around for a while. So you probably have had a laugh at it along with me. But I guess notwithstanding the social media piece, and kind of Melissa, as you said, you know, the brand teams to some extent are pushing kind of quite awareness-orientated metrics. They're saying the performance marketers at the other end of the business are very much optimizing around cost per acquisition, lifetime value, all that sort of stuff, goals in a website capacity. And then you've got your customer decision journey, one thing, and then your actual service design blueprint, which is how the hell you're going to actually plug into that customer journey. On the other hand, and then you've got all this stuff, as Jason sort of says, well, if this idea of, you know, being a relatively single channel marketer is change, then what on earth are we going to do about it? And I kind of would wrap this around a bit of a story, and I talked about this on HubSpot Academy yesterday, so forgive me, around this idea of, well, you know, we are kind of naturally in this world relatively mono-channel, I suppose. And we have a specialism. We used to talk about this idea of the T-shaped marketer all the time. You have this kind of vertical, and then you're supposed to have a horizontal on the T to understand what the other channels are doing and how you can best function within them. And we actually think about it more like a V now. Well, actually, you need to kind of find your opposite number. So SEOs, for instance, or analytics, people need to know more about UX. UX people need to know more about SEO and more about measurement and more about metrics. And in doing so, you are getting more out of your own function whilst better supporting and reflecting the function of other people within your teams. And in the larger organizations, as both Melissa and Stoney mentioned, that's super difficult because it's all a big layer cake mess at times. But if you are broader, have a better understanding of the challenges in someone else's function, you're going to do your job a lot better, and you'll simply cease to be a mono-channel marketer by definition of the fact that you've just been learning every day. And embracing that every day as a school day approach, I think, will get you outside of your proverbial box, forgive the terminology, into a much wider, much more dynamic marketing world.
So, I mean, in fact, moving from mono to multi is making sure that the people in the different positions or the different posts have an understanding of the multiple areas that the company is dealing with. So you're asking people to become more multi-talented and less mono-talented, which is something traditionally bosses like say, well, I like somebody who just does one thing. And you're now saying you actually need to do one thing principally and a few other things well and be able to interact. Is that right?
And that is certainly one piece of the puzzle. I think the skills thing for sure, you know, we constantly need to broaden out and support one another for sure. And of course, you've got the processes and the technology there. Fundamentally, a lot of organizations have the processes, but don't necessarily have the tech, or they have the tech and not the processes. And that's sort of fairly simple. It's a fairly simple management consultancy truth, not to bore anybody with it. But this idea of, well, actually, I've got the actual solution for how I understand my service design and my customer and how I can get them together. We have a process that we've established across team. And actually then do we have the right people in the right place in the right way to actually deliver on that ambition? So it is more than just people, but I like to think, as a lover of humanity, that the people are the most important part. And we'll still always have our search or our paid search or our paid social or our social media or our programmatic media, but actually understanding your opposite number is really fundamental, at least I believe.
Brilliant. So no, I would agree 100%. I'm with you all the way there. Next question is for Stoney. Is most brands aren't leveraging the tools, the skills, or the opportunities that are currently available. Why are they not using them? I mean, we have tools. I mean, I don't know what they are, and you presumably do. The tools, the skills, or the opportunities, why aren't people using them?
Honestly, I think people are buried under an avalanche of information, and it's just so much. You know, and we deal with this every day. We're just getting clients say, hey, you know what, can you do social media? And like, we can't. We don't have the time. We don't have the resources. And we look at our tools and we're like, well, you know, our budget allows for this tool and this tool and this tool, but man, it would be really nice if we could get these other tools. So it's both a combination of budget, it's resources, and, you know, people who have the education to even know what needs to be done or what tools need to be used or how to use them. And these are all struggles that many businesses face. You know, we could spend millions of dollars on the tools, not to mention the people utilizing the tools alone. But you have to cut it off somewhere and go, this is what we have.
Okay, yeah, great stuff. I love the idea of I mean, you mentioned tools, and then you said the people using them, and I think that's something that people lose sight of. Moving over to Aiden, in fact, I know you've got a great deal of knowledge about how to measure all this stuff, and Simon Cox is asking about that in the chat window. We've got these tools, we've got these opportunities. How do you measure the cross-channel acquisition or the cross-channel customer experience?
Well, I mean, realistically, it depends on the tool set that you are ultimately using. And I tend to think about data in a number of, I think about parties, but I always imagine it to be like an office party. So your first party data is the stuff that's goal. It's your own party. It's you on your sofa in your pajamas watching Netflix. That's my ideal world. First party data is great. Second party data is going to your coworkers party that you don't really love necessarily, but you kind of have to go. So that's working with your retail partners or second parties or marketplaces. And your third party stuff from the ad platform. Now, they all kind of are relatively protective, I think, of their own data pots, I suppose. And they all present their own challenges and opportunities. And there is a lot of, I guess, I wouldn't call it data corruption necessarily, but we lose about 20% of our accuracy once we move the data across pots. And there are a few different things in play. Some of you are probably familiar with some analytics tools. Probably most of you are familiar to some extent with Google Analytics, one way or another. And that we would say, is kind of your basic level solution. So thinking about the urchin tracking module or UTM code within that. And I always think about it in a really sort of basic way. I don't know, everyone, Game of Thrones. Melissa, Stoney, do you watch Game of Thrones?
Yes, and read the books.
Right, and read the books also, even more importantly. So let's say, for argument's sake, at a really basic level, you're running campaigns on 5 different channels. It's Black Friday, whatever. Let's say you're going to a particular destination, so that's your website. Let's call it Westeros.com. Okay, we're going to Westeros. The source where we're coming from is Meereen. So Daenerys Targaryen is a Marine, okay? And she's going to go to Westeros. She's going to get there on the back of a dragon. So that's our medium for the purposes of the channel that we're tracking. And the campaign, rather than Black Friday, might be to take the Iron Throne. So we're coming from Westeros to Meereen on the back of a dragon, take the Iron Throne. And all of a sudden now I know, well, actually, what was the efficacy of the dragon and our campaign to take the Iron Throne? Did it work? Did it not work in driving a particular conversion on a website? So it's all about establishing, look, where is, on a base level, on a really kind of, I guess, a self-service level, as I would call it, how does a user get from a particular place via a particular mechanism to something that drives or moves the needle, as we call it, around a revenue goal? And that, of course, is the basic premise of something like UTM tracking. Now, at a more sophisticated level, you can look at Google Cloud for Marketing. Sorry, I'm a little bit Google-centric, so you'll have to forgive me. And that's pulling things like your self-service advertising solutions like AdWords, your enterprise-level solutions, what are now Google Marketing Platform, formerly the DoubleClick ecosystem, YouTube, and looking at Google Analytics and Firebase and plugging them all together with your, say, CRM solution like Salesforce, your ordering system, your customer service solution, storing them all, interrogating them with BigQuery, and pumping them into a machine learning tool. Now, that's the other end of the spectrum. So there are a few different ways to skin the cat. But whilst there are different data pots, and there are different, I guess, people in there, and I think Simon's question around agencies, so they're so protective, oh my God, what will we do? You have to kind of also manage that relationship quite well. Look, I need to work with you more closely in order to track our activity across platform. And it's beneficial for me because, we'll drive more revenue. And it's beneficial for you because our marketing spend will be more efficient. And that's what you'll ultimately get out of it. And you'll report more effectively, our relationship will be stronger, and the retainer will be better. So it depends on who you're making the argument to, but you do still have to kind of appreciate, look, regardless of the tracking solution you're using, you have to sort of get everybody on the same page about what is being tracked and why and where and how. And that's always going to be the question that I'll lead with. Your appetite and your, of course, resources, Stoney then points out, dictate what sorts of solutions technologically you might use.
Okay, brilliant stuff. Well, I'm going to go and look into all that. I might also read Game of Thrones so I actually understand what you said.
I want to know how long he took coming up with that analogy. That was it's pretty well worked out.
I was thinking, because you talked about sci-fi, Stoney, a little bit earlier, and I started thinking about, I should read George R.R. Martin's new book. I really wish he would write the new one. And then it stuck in my head. So my head goes to weird places. So you'll have to. I apologize. Sorry, George, if you're watching.
So you just made that up in the last 15, 20 minutes?
That is correct.
Brilliant stuff. And for a little bit of backfill, in fact, he was talking about sci-fi, and the reason that whole thing started off in Aiden's head, which is slightly worrying, is because Stoney's writing a sci-fi novel which will be published in 3 years.
Who knows when? Who knows when? It's not even done.
Well, I hope sooner. I'd rather read that than Game of Thrones.
It's only 7,000 pages.
Yeah,
all $5. Come on.
Okay, I'll get my courage together. I'll read it, and then I can actually do cross-channel tracking, which would be wonderful. Melissa,
yes,
I know you're really big on customer service channels, and you told me they're vital, and you've converted me. How can I get that right? How can I help my customers get that right? Because it's something I know they're getting wrong because I'm not giving them the good advice.
It starts, point one is company core values, like what your values are going to be about your customers, and that's company wide. And those core values will determine who you are going to hire to run your social media and your customer service, because social media now is customer service for a lot of brands. And it's a lot of work. A lot of people think they can just hire someone off the street and throw them into social media. And that is when you see all the social media fails. That if you just Google social media fails and look at Google Images, it's very painful. So you have to have a plan how you're going to handle every single situation. I tell everybody to have like a crisis manual and be ready to go. And I give an example, and everyone who's seen me in a webinar knows it's the same example. When I was managing social media for Moz, we had a DDoS attack and everything was gone. The tools, everything. And I ran it East Coast time because they're Pacific, they're asleep. So it was only me. Where's my tools? Where's this? But Moz was smart in that they had a manual. I could go into it. I knew who to call to wake up, which developers to contact. Everything was set up for me so I could get help. But you have to plan that. I don't care what size business you are. I take the dentist who shot the lion in Africa. That was not a very big business. But the way his company handled it on social media is what closed his doors, So you have to have an overall plan, how you're going to handle it, how you're not going to offend, what you're going to say. I tell everybody, try and steer them offline as much as you can. Talk to them online so people can see you're trying to make a good effort, but get them offline. But the other thing is whoever is handling customer service on social media has to have the same temperament and core values as the person who's managing customer service for email and the telephone. Because what you'll have is they were really nice on social media, and then I called them and they were rude, and they record you and they put that on Twitter. And then people see maybe your business is really a jerk, So you have to be very careful. If everybody, it's the same with what we were talking about with marketing. If everybody in the company is on the same page, and everybody knows how customers are expected to be treated, then you don't have a problem. But if a customer walks into your company and talks to your manager, and the manager is condescending and a jerk, again, that's going to be spread. So it has to be everybody. It has to be the entire company. Customers are number one. We don't talk down to them. I mean, you will end up on the news today. You'll end up in the fails and Google Images. You'll end up you just can't afford not to have an overall plan for customer service.
Yeah, I mean, what I hear there is I like the idea, get them offline, but don't mess it up offline, or it will come back online again into haunt.
Right.
And I like the idea because my immediate reaction is, get them offline, and then that limitation to what you can actually do is interesting. Sorry.
You also have to have someone who has a temperament. I tell people that you forget when you're dealing with hundreds of people an hour that those are humans behind the scenes. And I had a guy go off on me once and really insult me very badly, and then send a private message and said, "I'm sorry, I just found out I have a brain tumor." So of course he was having a bad day. People have bad days. You know who I've been really mean to? Comcast. When my Wi-Fi is not working, I turn into a jerk. Aiden knows it is what it is. I apologize to Comcast. It's in the moment. I have to work. So you have to be able to manage angry people, upset people, and not take it personal, because it's not personal.
Well, yeah, I mean, I used to run a website for kids, and we had the thing was, it was games and songs, and so when the site went wrong, the kids were really annoyed, and that made the parents very angry. And an angry parent, because they can't explain to the child why they can't access their games, is one of the more stressful things, I think. And when we received the messages, they were very aggressive.
Yes.
And it's very difficult not to be aggressive back. But then when you do write back and say, actually, we're doing our best thing, and they turn around and say, oh, I've just realized I'm talking to a human.
Right.
Which I find wildly interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, you feel like you're yelling at a brand and a brand is talking back to you, but there are people behind the scenes on both. And if you keep that in mind, the other thing I tell people is never burn bridges. You don't know who you are talking to. They may have a weird name on Twitter or a fake email they're using for whatever. Sometimes that person is very influential and could be your boss at your next job. So you have to be very, very careful. And then the other thing that I'll mention is, and I've seen this happen a lot, is companies let their employees represent them as individuals on social media. Okay. So they'll say, I'm so-and-so and I work for this. If someone is representing you on social media, I represent Semrush and PubCon as myself all the time. But that means I watch what I say 24/7. I don't say things that could hurt either company. And that has to be, I mean, neither company has said that that's a rule, for me, but I think it should be a rule overall for most businesses. They need to say, if you're going to put our name and your profile, these are our behavioral expectations for you on social media.
I have a general rule, if you don't mind me jumping in here, when dealing with people online, over the phone, whatever, is treat them how you would if they were there face-to-face. Because I found that we treat people face-to-face much, much nicer than we will typing out an email or a tweet or something like that. And we have that mindset, if they were here in front of me, how would I be talking to them? And just try to do that, because otherwise what you find is if they reply nicely and they treat you as if they're face-to-face, then you're going, yeah, sorry, I was a jerk. So you just alleviate that, going, okay, they're here in front of me, even though they're not. This is how I would talk to you.
Right.
Yeah,
I agree.
I was talking to a psychiatrist the other day who was talking about the idea of parent, adult, and child. Not my own, of course. And when a customer's going berserk, they're acting like a child. And if you talk like a parent, they will continue to act like a child. But if you talk like an adult, they're more likely to move up to that same kind of even keel adult discussion. Would that strike a chord, or am I overstating it?
That's great. And I completely agree. And there's one thing I want to add to that. And what Stoney said was, I always, when I'm typing out a response, either email or on social media, I reread it 3 times and think, how could someone be offended by this before I send it? Because I could be being genuine and kind, but one phrase for their country is offensive or could come across the wrong way. You have to make sure that before you hit send, that you make sure nothing could offend, because then it's in writing and they can take a screenshot and put it on Twitter and say, they said this and this is what they meant. And I've seen that happen. So now I'm like paranoid before I reply. I'm always checking everything, but it's better to be paranoid and careful than to just spit out replies as fast as you can.
People always interpret what you mean, and it'll rarely ever be what you actually meant.
Right.
And you have to be careful about that.
And it's scary, because one thing can hurt a whole business across all your channels, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah. Oh, super. I love that answer. That was great. Thank you. Now we've got a question for all 3 of you. We've got 20 minutes left. We've got 2 more questions where we're actually going to have a little roundtable discussion. If anyone does have any questions, please do put them in the chat window. We're very interested to hear. If you don't, we'll just keep talking for the next 20 minutes on the next 2 questions. I like this one because we've been talking about how small brands feel like they're being pushed out with the idea of answer engine optimization. It's too much for them to deal with. There are too many platforms, too many devices, too many channels. And in this particular case, is cross or omni-channel realistic for anybody except the big brands? We can start with Aiden because he hasn't talked for a while.
Being completely realistic, I think, Jason. I don't even think omnichannel is right for a lot of brands, let alone possible for a lot of brands. I think, as you kind of very appropriately put, like omnichannel is only really possible for the very largest of brands, and I actually cannot name one, and that includes Google, who are an omnichannel brand. Now, I think it is actually it is an aspiration for sure. On paper, it always seems like it's the right choice to be more complex, but sometimes, actually, I think for a large number of brands, and probably a large number of people who are watching this webinar, multi-channel and doing it well with your own resources, with your own realities in mind, is actually more important than trying to scale it up and be, I guess, that totemic example of the best, most complex interactive brand. And so whilst I think this is sort of the textbook answer, there's no stopping halfway. You can't start being a multi-channel brand and then just sort of stop. So it's about really being quite considerate about, is this actually appropriate for me? Do I need a data management platform? Do I need a product information management tool? Do I need a large-scale CRM system? And if the truth is, actually, I can function with a more self-service, a more user-friendly, a more plug-and-play tool, that's what you should be doing. And as much as you can kind of go, look, I want what that guy or that lady or that company has over there, sometimes, that jumper doesn't fit you. It's too big. It's just not right. So I kind of, being devil's advocate in some ways, you might need to hire experts to implement it. You might need resource you don't have. So there's a self-reflection thing, I think, wrapped around this. And because, as Stoney points out earlier on, we're information overload, analysis paralysis, inundated all the time, we're almost gluttonous with it. We need to be very cautious about, well, actually, what information is the information that's most true for us.
Yeah. Okay. So do it within your capacities, but do it well, and don't try doing too much and getting it wrong. It's worse to get it wrong by doing too much than doing it well with what you actually need to do. Stoney, do you think smaller brands can get involved in? Now we've put Omni to one side, cross-channel. How can smaller brands get in there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to echo what Aiden said, but I'll do it with a story. Last Friday, I was teaching a workshop for small businesses, and it was a 6-hour workshop, and everybody seemed really interested in what we're doing. Then was getting towards the end, I started to hear this. It was almost like there was a mutiny going on. It's like, how can we be expected to do all of this? I mean, they were getting mad, and it's like, at me, it seemed like, hey, I'm just the messenger, but they're getting upset. It's like, this is too much. How are we supposed to do it? And I had to tell them, I said, look, you can only do what you can do. You set goals and you achieve it. And then you set the next goal and you achieve it. So don't look at any marketing as I've got to be doing all of these things. I got to do Omni, cross-platform, cross-channel. I've got to be doing, it's too overwhelming. You jump in and say, you know what, I'm going to move from what I'm doing now and add this. And then figure that out. Work it in. And then once you've got that, you say, you know what, okay, now I'm going to add the next one. And you just take baby steps if you have to until you can get the resources to take larger steps. So, small businesses, large businesses, they all got to start somewhere, and that nobody can do everything. There's too much out there for anybody to do everything. Yeah. So you just take the next step.
Brilliant. I really like that. And the idea is set goals that you can achieve. And I like the idea of saying, I'm going to integrate one thing at a time. And logically with this, you would say, I'll start off with my organic, because I'm an SEO guy, and then I'll add my paid, then I'll add my social. I find that helps me at least. It's that idea of kind of thinking, I've got so much on my plate that I just can't even start. And that gives you a nice way to break it down into stages and start and build it up bit by bit. Brilliant. Melissa, your take on this? Can any other things to add?
For small businesses, I'd say, what can you do well, and what can you maintain? That needs to be the consideration. Like, a lot of them don't have the time to be on Twitter all day. So do you want to have to hire someone and maintain that? That's going to cost you to have someone that knows how to design, and I mean, create content. A lot of small businesses don't have someone that can do that for them. But I use this one company as an example. They didn't have time, and they didn't have a lot of money for PPC. They had a website, but where they just blew up their business here is they created live videos. They were a contractor, and they fixed things on the houses around here. And they would videotape things that were done wrong. we wouldn't be fixing this if the person who built this house had done this right. You know, this is what you should look for. And it was just short 45-second to minute videos that they kept pasting on Facebook or putting on Facebook, which, you know, Facebook loves Facebook Live, and all their followers were notified. And then people would share it and they're like, oh, this is the contractor we want, because they know what they're doing. They're showing us what people are doing wrong. And the owner told me, I got so much business out of that I had to hire 2 more crews and buy multiple trucks, and it grew faster than what I actually wanted, and I'm not comfortable. Now, I know for a lot of people, like, that's what we want, but he found the thing that worked. And I think you have to do what is going to work for you, what is going to convert for you, what is going to build the reputation for your business, what can you maintain. When you're a small business, you don't have a lot of time. So I recommend, you know, people use tools like Canva. Wave.video is a website, which is great. You can create custom graphics, custom videos, and just figure out what works for you.
Yeah, brilliant. So, I mean, it is, and once you start doing something, keep doing it. Make sure you don't kind of do it halfway and then stop. So I
mean, sometimes things aren't going to work.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, you have to be open to, this isn't working for us. We need to try something else. When you're a small business, you have to be, because they don't have the funds that everybody else does. And that's hard. So I don't know what you all think about Facebook advertising versus PPC, but it just.
Oh, I'd be interested to know, because I've been talking to clients about this. I've got a client who was doing very well on AdWords, and suddenly on Facebook, he's getting a cheaper CPA. And so he's now saying, oh, I'm going to switch everything to Facebook and forget about AdWords.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a bit extreme, but
it depends
any thoughts on it? Sorry.
Yeah, what works for you? What is working for you? And that, I mean, you have to be able, like Aiden said, you have to be able to measure some, but it all comes down to, for me, conversions and not vanity metrics. And I feel like sometimes small businesses look at that and they're like, we got 50 likes, but 50 likes doesn't make you any money. So bottom line, what is going to make you money and what is going to help your brand? That should be the goal.
Okay. So, I mean, just quickly on Facebook versus AdWords, has anybody got anything to say about that? Because I'm actually really interested.
Okay, I'm going to town.
Great. Go for it, man.
All right. I mean, realistically, Facebook have been over-reporting their metrics to the tune of about 900%. Been doing it for about 2 years. And I'm not even lying. Facebook and now Nick Clegg, maybe you're familiar with him, Jason, who's now CP at Facebook, have, I guess, talked around this particular point. But you'll find that a lot of the Facebook reporting, or at least the numbers that are coming out of the back end of the base level system, are changing recently. And that would suggest if they're changing recently across the board, across businesses, across verticals, they weren't right in the first place. So either they're more right now or are they more right then, I suppose is the question that I'm asking myself. Now, my clients have pulled about $15 million out of the Facebook corporation in the past month, and they haven't reallocated it, strictly speaking, to AdWords, to PPC, but I am seeing a lot more of it go into programmatic solutions, whatever they may look like, across kind of video particularly and beyond, to support that kind of narrative storytelling we were using Facebook ads for. So I suppose just sort of like to support, Melissa, your point, you know, measure what matters for sure. You know, don't get analysis paralysis. Look at the stuff that moves the needle. Don't report on the vanity metrics. If Facebook works for you, use it. If Facebook doesn't work for you, don't bin it, test it, make sure you are right. Validate the notion that Facebook is incorrect. And you might find that you are also proven incorrect too. But if you do find, look, Facebook is not working, I would think about reallocating budget and resource for sure. But I wouldn't run at it half as quickly as just move it to PPC. Yeah,
I mean, I'm kind of scared for this client is that he's got so into his head that Facebook's working incredibly well that he's kind of putting all his eggs in one basket and he's going to regret it in 6 months.
I think you'll regret it in 6 months, Melissa.
Yeah, I putting all your eggs in one basket, I don't care what your job is or who you are, that's a bad idea.
Yep, I agree, 100%. And that's what I keep telling him, but he doesn't listen. But we had last week, Kirsty Hulse was talking about people. She's seen people lose their business because they've done that. They've put all their eggs into the Facebook basket or the PPC basket. And it's incredibly important to convince our clients to say, you do need this multi-channel And in order to convince them, you do need to be able to measure it. And we do need to come up with intelligent solutions that allow them to see that those channels are all working together to make the sale, which is what you were saying, Melissa. Having that sale is what really matters at the end of the day. And they're all contributing. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, the other thing I was thinking, maybe we can ask Aiden about it. The one thing I see with small businesses that pay for PPC is when you have, like, I have friends that go in and audit and they have just lost money. I mean, whoever they were paying to do PPC for them, just, they're paying all this money every month. They're getting nothing out of it. So what would you say to a small business, like, because they don't know PPC, like how could they keep track and make sure they're not losing out? Or what should they be asking a PPC consultant to make sure that they're not getting ripped off?
I think it's a case by case in absolutely any instance, Melissa. But I'm with you in that I've seen numerous occasions, and actually the base level of it makes me lose faith in marketing and marketers. Full stop. I think we are kind of charlatans to the left of us, charlatans to the right sometimes a little bit. And I find, and I'm sure you're the same. I'm sure Stoney, you're the same. Jason, you're the same. We spend so much time fixing other people's badly done jobs, to your contractor point, Melissa, that we sometimes, we're constantly sort of infinite loop of firefighting. And for me, kind of with small businesses and Facebook, it would be, look, take advantage of the Facebook education solutions that are available. They're not amazing, but they are free. So you look at the ad formats, look at the outcomes, look at the industry averages, look at businesses like yours, troll the advertising awards for what are best case examples. And maybe you can't afford that narrative storytelling format. Maybe you can't afford content on that scale, but you can afford to take inspiration from it most certainly. And I would say, don't leap into things like Power Editor. Don't leap into advanced audiences. Start to play with the really relatively basic stuff that we would describe as basic target, geography, demographics, community management. So the old school stuff that we know still works really well when we do it well, and actually try and drive, look, that interactivity forward, that engagement forward, and don't just throw good money after bad. Even if Facebook does launch an amazing new ad unit, it's just this really cool storytelling canvas. You don't have to do it, but you can go and learn about it and learn about the possibilities of it. I tend to always start with this incremental improvement piece, spend a very small amount of money, about maybe 5% of what you can afford to spend. Yes, it's not statistically significant at that scale, but it will give you some indication as to what is working and what is not working. And these are the types of questions that I tend to ask contractors and consultants. Well, what's the campaign goal? What are you tracking? What will define success? What will move the needle from a revenue perspective? What are the messaging opportunities in Facebook? What are the dynamic opportunities for content within various different ad units and frameworks? How are you going to report on that to me? These are the things I'm interested in. And if you don't get a satisfactory answer for a lot of these questions, and they're available on things like the Semrush blog, on the Moz blog and beyond, Social Media Examiner, et cetera, PubCon, you name it, a quick Google will give you answers that I would expect to get. You should seek to get those answers. If you don't get them, you don't give them any more money. And then you get Melissa or Stoney or myself in to fix it.
No, that was a really great answer. I mean, this episode has really shown me that I'm really an SEO and not a digital marketer. And this is bringing me into the idea of being more of a digital marketer, which I'm really keen on. So thank you very much. The last question, sorry, which I just skipped over, but same thing for all three of you. With the emergence of answer engine optimization, Omni, or in fact, I've put Omni, but now Aiden's taught me that it's cross or multi is probably more realistic. Multi-channel marketing just got a whole lot more complex with answer engine optimization. How do you think brand strategy is going to need to evolve in the next few years? Stoney, can you start, please?
No. I don't know the answer to that. That is a tough question. The answer engine throws a lot of wrenches in the works of what we do because it takes traffic away from the people that are trying to provide the answers. And Google's like, hey, we're going to circumvent that. We're going to give them the answer. On the other hand, did the click matter? If they just wanted a quick answer, does it matter that they clicked into your website to get it? Was that just going to be a bounce because they got the answer and ran away? And I don't know if these questions have fully been answered yet. We've seen the data that says, hey, when there's an answer box, then that reduces the clicks into the site by X%. But are we saying that, hey, that improved our bounce rates and that improved our conversion rates because we're not getting this traffic anymore? That's no good. But I don't know the answers to that at this point. I think we have to wait and see. But I do think it's a kind of a dangerous trend for businesses, and all the more reason why you have to be involved in many other avenues than just search or, you know, whatever you're doing now. Go, what else should we be doing? You can't put everything into one small area. You have to be looking at the contingency plan. If this goes down, where are we going to get our revenue from?
Yeah, sure. And make sure as well, I mean, the whole thing of on-SERP SEO, which is kind of trending a little bit at the moment, is saying you need to get your brand message across on the SERP now. You can't expect people to be coming to your site. They often won't come to your site, so they need to see whatever your brand message is on the SERP, which I think is incredibly important. Melissa, go ahead.
Well, brand recognition is, I mean, like Stoney was saying, they may not be going to your site, but they say that if someone sees your brand 3 to 6 times, trust is created. So answer questions. I mean, God bless the guy who told me why bubbles were coming out of my pool. Like, I didn't hire him, but I trust him now, and I read his blog because he educated me. So maybe if he has ads on there, it helps him out. I don't know, but people need answers to questions. I say there's nothing wrong with providing answers to questions for people, and it helps with brand recognition and trust.
Yeah, I mean, and the guy who helped you with your bubbles, one day maybe you'll convert, but his problem is going to be tracking you from the moment you learned about your bubbles to the moment you called him to actually fix something in your swimming pool. Is that right?
Well, he was like in a different country, but he helped me out.
So you're going to get a Finnish guy in to repair your swimming pool. Brilliant.
What were you going to say, Aiden?
I'm going to be a touch controversial, if that's okay. Well, I suppose probably nobody's surprised. 56 minutes in at this particular point. I think, yes, this whole answer engine is search engine optimization, and this, I guess, providing an answer is really important. And I salute the creator of the rich snippet. I think that establishes kind of a presence, but that's not really engagement for me, actually. And, we need to be interacting with people, not just reading stuff at them, I suppose. And verbal responses, of course, put listeners in control of stuff because we ask, our voice assistants, Alexa, Google Home, whatever. They're being marketed to in that capacity, but they're not really being engaged yet. Keeping user longer, which is, of course, that relationship building piece you just elaborated on with your the bubbles and in the pool guy, name unknown at this point. Right. But I think we have to sort of think about, well, how can we actually exploit this channel that is voice, this evolving piece? And I think, yes, there's a search element, but it's not the only element. There's a skills element too. How can we build platforms that actually create customer engagement? It's like the early stage of the App Store in some ways as well. And if you're not thinking about how you exploit voice assistants and voice in that capacity, you definitely need to know who your competitors are at the very, very least. And as the format, of course, develops and matures, because it's in its infancy now, capabilities become clearer, creativity becomes more possible, tracking becomes more potentially viable. There are loads of different ways that customers can benefit from us. And I guess how our audience behave and interact with that, I guess, little, trapped genie personality within a voice assistant will dictate how successful we are in future within voice, with a hat tip, of course, to voice search alongside.
Super stuff. Wonderful. That was a great answer. Has anyone got anything else they want to add to the question about the future?
Well, I think, Melissa, the branding is an important aspect of that, and getting out there and answering those questions. You may not just be benefiting the person that's getting the answer, whereas they get their answer and run away, but somebody might see that answer also, and they might be in the country, they might be in your local neighborhood, and they might go, hey, that's just what I need. Thanks for helping that person. I see you're an expert. And we're hoping, it's almost like we're relying on karma. We're doing all of these things, we're answering questions, doing all this stuff, and we're hoping eventually it comes around and really does benefit us. And I think we've seen that in the end it does, because it is building that recognition, it's building that authority, and it opens up opportunities that as a brand you wouldn't necessarily have had otherwise. very difficult to trace it back. What's the genesis of that? You know, we've gotten clients that they said, I saw you 5 years ago at this conference. It's like, oh, wow, that was okay, cool. That conference finally paid off. You know, a delayed reaction, but you know, we see that, and you know, eventually you go, you do enough things right, you're going to get rewarded.
Yeah, I mean, the measurability and traceability of it all becomes a phenomenally big problem. I like the idea of karma. It's also, it's belief. And you're saying, I need to believe that answering these questions will one day pay back. And that's what you're saying with your conferences. From what I understand, it could have been 20 years ago.
Yeah, it very well could have been.
Well, thank you all three of you. That was actually brilliant. We've come to the end of the hour. I really, really, really enjoyed that. That was amazing answers, a subject I knew very little about. Aiden, Melissa, and Stoney, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
You were absolutely brilliant. Next week is the last week. We're coming up to the 15th episode, the last episode, and that's going to be how can we amplify credibility signals and build EAT, expertise, authority, and trust. We've got Natalie Mott, Karen Lydon, and Ash Rama. Please do join us, same time, same place, Tuesday afternoon, whatever time it is for you now. Join us an hour ago in a week, if that makes sense. Thanks a lot.